price of gasoline may have gone down, but more West Virginians are looking for new ways to get around to help the environment and use less foreign oil. Emily Corio reports.
Alternative fuels are not widely used to power cars in West Virginia. But if you want to lessen your gas consumption, it's possible in this state. In fact, many West Virginians already travel on a vehicle that uses alternative fuel every day. 25 counties use biodiesel in school buses.
Presently, we have 25 counties that are using biodiesel. That accounts for about 2.5 million gallons of fuel annually of the total 6 million gallons that we use throughout the state. The cost of biodiesel is somewhat higher than regular diesel, but there are federal grants that are available to the suppliers so that we don't see that big difference between the costs of biodiesel and regular diesel. Indoor air quality directly affects learning, and so because we are in the learning business and we want them to grasp as much as possible, then part of that is to make sure that the indoor environment is of high quality.
The biodiesel in those buses comes from the state's only commercial producer, AC&S in Nitro.
It's 22 years old, and it started out as a railcar cleaning facility, and we added chemical manufacturing about 5 years after it was started, and now we're adding biodiesel. We looked at biodiesel as adding a product for AC&S that we could benefit the environment and provide fuel that lessens our dependency on foreign oil in the United States and West Virginia.
Schools aren't the only ones using this alternative fuel in their diesel engines. Some backyard conversions allow diesel engines to run on vegetable oil.
The theory was when Rudolf Diesel in the 30s designed the diesel engine, the original intention of the engine was to run on the peanut oil. Therefore, the engine loves the oil. It runs longer, it lasts longer. We're experiencing about the same fuel economy, the emissions are lower, and in the process we somewhat became environmentalists, and at the same time we're getting rid of the cooking waste, oil.
But there is a difference between the vegetable oil used in home conversions and biodiesel produced commercially.
I do need to draw a distinction between vegetable oil and biodiesel. I certainly don't want to demean an individual producer. The processes are fundamentally similar. There are obviously some economies of scale. And then the other issue is, of course, if it's being produced commercially, there are the quality control aspects of ensuring that it meets specification.
There are 2 biodiesel stations in West Virginia for those who don't have the time or the inclination to make their own. In the meantime, the number of flex fuel vehicles has increased in the state. These cars can run on the alternative fuel ethanol.
Ethanol is nothing other than ethyl alcohol, drinking alcohol.
It's moonshine. It's a grain alcohol. Obviously once it gets to the 85, it's 15% gasoline and 85% ethanol, so you obviously can't drink it.
The ethanol traditionally was produced from sugar, but most of ours comes from corn. At present, ethanol is largely consumed in the motor industry by blending with gasoline. So we'll see these days on the pumps that the fuel can contain up to 10% ethanol, and that is really where most of it is being consumed.
70% of the gasoline in the United States right now has some form of ethanol in it, and you'll probably, traveling around, I'm sure you've seen where they have E10, and that just means it's 10% ethanol, 90% gasoline, whereas what we have is reversed. It's 85% ethanol and 15% gasoline. So you have to have a flex fuel vehicle in order to run the 85.
While E85 does well in the performance category, it's not as efficient as gasoline. Still, some people just like the fact that the majority of the fuel going into their car comes from the U.S.
I'd always equate it to your daughter is in the grocery business and she's selling milk and it's a nickel higher than someplace else. would you go to the other store or would you go buy it from your daughter even though it's a nickel more? Well, most people would say I'd go buy it from my daughter. Well, that's kind of the way you have to look at ethanol, because we're creating that here within the United States, and we have to support what we're doing here as opposed to sending our energy money overseas for basically countries that don't really like us very well.
Kelly owns one of 2 E85 stations in the state. The other is in Bridgeport. Ethanol is mainly produced from corn. This is also a major resource for our food supply, and this competition between food and fuel has hurt ethanol's popularity. Another alternative fuel still in development is derived from coal.
If you're in the Midwest, of course, you're going to have a lot of ethanol because they grow a lot of corn, soybeans, biodiesel, et cetera, like that. Some places in Texas, they've been using natural gas and propane for many, many years because they have a lot of it. Right here in West Virginia, it's been announced that there may be some coal-to-energy plants being built, and therefore we have a lot of coal here. So why not take that coal, turn it into liquid, and now it becomes basically an alternative fuel to imported oil.
But this alternative doesn't come without drawbacks.
With the volatility that we've had in the price of petroleum fuels, I think it's fairly hard to find investors that are willing to jumpstart very large programs of that kind. It produces no more CO2 emissions, in fact, probably a very small amount less than conventional petroleum diesel. So, but that is at the tailpipe. It produces more during the processing than would be the case for petroleum extraction and refining. So the answer is, from a climate change perspective, if you demand that they are equal or that it's better in CO2, you would need to sequester that CO2 at the point of production.